a little earlier, we touched on the idea, or we've kind of like hinted at your agency recruitment versus like Daryl and I are both internal. I actually started an agency back, right out of college and have worked in agency on and off in my career. But one thing that I think is interesting is there seems to be this natural butting of heads between agency recruiters and internal recruiters. It's like this ever evolving, never changing struggle between the two parties. I have my theories as to why, but I'd really love to hear from your perspective. I know you're a little newer to the recruitment game than I am, but what are some best practices that you have found? Because I know you work on a team that, also does embedded and works, pretty much hand in hand with internal teams. What are some best practices that agency recruiters and in-house recruiter or recruitment teams can adhere to? What are some ways we can like kind of find some common ground and work towards a common goal?
Yeah, no, I love this topic because I know Andrew, you post about it. I feel like once a week almost, just because I can imagine it's got to be funny going from the agencies out, which I've never done in internal, but just I can imagine how many messages you probably get or emails from people like myself, like, hey man, like let me help you with this role. But I think for us, like it's been interesting to see because we partner with like HR leaders, so we kind of have a foot up because HR leaders are usually the ones that are making like those decisions, like what's our budget, when can we spend this or that. But we also partner with like heads of TA like yourself, Andrew. So I think the key to that, I think keys to success is really just like you said, we're on the same team. This is a partnership. If you reach out, like I actually talked to someone that said they had, or I saw I think a LinkedIn post where someone had reached out and basically was saying like that they were bad at their job and like, hey, let me fill this for you. And like that's how you don't do it. Like you don't want this person thinking like, especially right now, right? Like when the market's so crazy, like in people's minds, like, hey, if someone has to do my job for me, if you make it seem that way, like why do they need me? Right. So I
Yeah.
think for us when we're partnering with like heads of TA, whatever, it's really like we want to be an extension of your team, right? Like we are not trying to fight you and fill this role. Like your team is like you guys have a lot of roles. Like you're very, you're trying to fill 15 sales roles, and you have this one like, compensation or payroll position that like is just really tough. Like it's on site. You really need this one like system that someone's used, and like, hey, we've worked in this area for 10 plus years. Like we have a really good network of people in that area, and we could probably get you 5 to 10 candidates in a week. So
Yeah.
like I think really just
Mhm.
trying to offer that of like we're here if you need us, and when we're ready to go, like we can get like if you need someone now, like we can get you someone tomorrow or today this afternoon, right? So I think the key to success is really just trying to approach them as like you are really a partner, like you're there to listen, you're there to hear them out, and really not trying to fight the other recruiters on their team, right? Like
Mhm.
we don't want to take over your function. We just want to help out when we can, and then get the person in there, and then call us when you need us in the future, right? So I think people approach it the wrong way. I don't know what your experience is with people reaching out, but I think just making it like a partnership is probably like where people miss the mark.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think it's interesting because internal recruiters and agency recruiters are incentivized by different things, right?
Mhm.
Internal recruiters are often driven by metrics. They're driven by getting roles filled, adhering to a time to fill metric. Like, that's kind of what drives internal recruitment teams, aside from hiring managers breathing down their neck as well. Um, Agency recruiters are obviously monetarily incentivized, right? A lot of times because
Yeah.
of the agency model. So my understanding and my perspective is that, from an agency perspective, and especially when I was in that game as well, it was always work closest to the dollar, fill the role as quickly as you can. Like you're not thinking about that the company's necessarily long-term hiring strategy or their employer brand or anything like that. You're thinking about, I need to get a butt in that seat so I can get my check, right? And so I think that naturally leads to different kind of perspectives, right? In how we approach things. I think a lot of agency recruiters think that internal teams move slow, um, because agencies are like, hey, like I've worked really hard to get this pipeline
I'm
of
due.
people in front of you, right? And you're taking 2 weeks to respond to me. Like, what's the deal? But they don't often see the budgetary things that are being discussed. They don't see the org that's being redesigned internally. They don't see like these other levers that have to be pulled in order for this role to get filled. And so I feel like there's that natural kind of like tension that happens because there's just a misunderstanding and a misalignment on business objectives. I think, as somebody who receives tons and tons of these emails from agencies, I get it. I've been in that seat. I ran a staffing agency and built it from a franchise from the ground up. And
Mm-hmm.
so we were doing everything we could to get a client, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
totally get
Yeah.
that. But I think where there's a disconnect is the message a lot of times from agencies is like you had said, which is like, hey, hiring is a struggle. I know it's hard on your team. Let me help you. And like to me, I'm like, you know nothing about our process. You know nothing about what the work we've done to get us to where we are today. That's a giant assumption to make.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also like this idea of, I call it the level of needs, right? Like there's different levels to where companies could use and deploy outsourced recruitment or agency recruitment. Not everybody has no process and needs someone to kind of come in and be their savior. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of companies that have really great processes and they still have a budget for outsourced recruitment and they can use that for really hard to fill roles, right? Or roles that are going to take maybe 6 months. Like that's where executive search comes in. Maybe they have this giant hiring push, right? And the team it does not have the bandwidth, and so they need support for 6 months, just getting roles filled, and they just need it for that short period of time. But like, there's all these different scenarios and these different ways where agency recruitment can be utilized, but it seems that agency recruiters a lot of times kind of just they treat every client or every company they talk with as the same, as if they have the same type of needs, the same type of problems. It's just a giant assumption, and I think that turns a lot of internal hiring managers or TA leaders off from working with those types of agencies. So that's my perspective. I don't want to go on a super tangent here. Maybe Daryl can jump in as well. But like,
Mm-hmm.
I just think that agency, that the area that I see as an opportunity for agency is to really get good at showcasing who they are and what they do and how they can help, but without saying, hey, we're going to come in and like rescue your whole business. It's more like, here's what we specialize in, here's the results we've produced. If you need help in this area, like we're here for you.